All right, welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're tackling that budgeting series you wanted to explore. So get ready, because we're going to be going way beyond just the 50-30-20 basics and really dive into,
Yeah.
you know, like the psychology of financial control and all those nitty-gritty tips that you actually need to, like, make a budget work in the real world.
It is really fascinating how much of this is all about mindset. It's not just about spreadsheets and numbers. It's how those tools can impact like your day-to-day decisions and that long-term outlook for your money.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm excited to really unpack today. So let's start with this idea of financial control. The sources mentioned it as like a big benefit of budgeting, but like, what does that actually mean for someone who's maybe feeling overwhelmed by their finances right now?
Well, you can almost imagine it like the difference between driving a car with a clear view of the road versus trying to drive in a really dense fog. Budgeting gives you that clear view. It helps you identify those spending leaks that are just draining your resources without you even realizing it. And it really empowers you to make choices that are intentional and aligned with your goals.
Okay, so it's like instead of feeling like your money is controlling you, you're taking control and you're steering it in the direction you want to go.
Exactly, yeah. And there's even research that shows that having that sense of control over your finances is directly correlated with just lower stress and anxiety overall. So it's about shifting from that feeling of scarcity to feeling abundance, even if you're not like,
Yeah,
rolling in dough.
right. It makes sense. It's more about that feeling of empowerment to like make choices rather than just constantly reacting to like financial surprises. But speaking of surprises, we all know that life throws curveballs, right? So how does budgeting help with like those unexpected expenses that just seem to pop up at like the worst possible time?
That is exactly where an emergency fund comes in. It's not just about surviving those financial hits, but like weathering them without having to like completely derail all of your long-term goals.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, the sources recommend aiming for like 3 to 6 months of living expenses in an emergency fund. But
Oh,
like realistically,
right.
how many people are actually able to like hit that goal?
It's definitely something that you kind of work towards gradually,
Right.
right? And even starting with a smaller amount can make a huge difference. Like even $500 or $1,000 is like that initial safety net that can prevent you from spiraling into debt, when those unexpected costs arise.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how even just having that small emergency fund could create like a sense of calm and like
Yeah,
just a little bit of security.
yeah.
But let's be real, saving can be tough. Especially, we're bombarded with messages telling us to like buy now, pay later and,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So how does budgeting help us resist all of that temptation and actually
Plan.
achieve those like
No,
long-term financial goals?
I think it really comes down to aligning your spending with your values. One of the strategies that the source material mentions is goal-oriented budgeting. So it's about connecting your financial goals, like buying a home, traveling, really retirement. You connect those to your budget.
Oh, so instead of just mindlessly spending, you're like constantly reminded of
Yeah,
why you're saving.
exactly. Yeah, when you have that clear vision of what you're working towards, it's so much easier to say no to those like impulse purchases that really don't align with that bigger picture.
I love that. It's like making your money work for you, not against you.
Yeah.
But the sources also emphasize that, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to budgeting. So can you talk a little bit more about the different strategies
Yeah.
and like how someone might choose the right one for their personality and goals?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's kind of like choosing a workout routine. What works for your marathon running friend might not be the best fit for someone who's just starting their like fitness journey.
I like that analogy. So let's say I'm like intrigued by the 50-30-20 rule,
Yeah.
but I'm also someone who like loves detailed control over my spending. Is there a way to kind of like combine different budgeting strategies?
Absolutely. You can definitely blend elements from different methods. So, for example, you can use the 50-30-20 rule as that like general framework.
Mhm.
But within your wants category, you might implement the envelope system for the areas where you tend to like overspend a little bit.
Right, that's a great point. It's all about finding what works best for you. But the source material also mentions a ton of different budgeting tools, like apps, spreadsheets, journals. How does someone even begin to like navigate all of that?
It can definitely feel a little overwhelming. I think it's helpful to first consider like your tech comfort level. So if you love having everything like right there at your fingertips, there are amazing apps like Mint or YNA. They connect to your accounts, they categorize your transactions, and give you all these detailed visual reports.
Yeah, those sound super convenient. But what if I'm more of a like
Mm.
pen and paper person?
Then a budgeting journal might be a better fit for you. You can track everything manually, create your own personalized categories. And for some people, the act of actually like physically writing things down can be incredibly therapeutic and insightful.
It's like a mindfulness practice for your money.
Exactly. It forces you to slow down, pay attention to your spending habits, and really connect with those financial goals.
I love that. So whether you're like a tech enthusiast or a pen and paper devotee, there's a tool out there for you.
Absolutely. And the good news is that most of these tools offer free trials or basic versions. So you can kind of experiment and find what works best for you before committing to a paid subscription.
That's really helpful. Okay, so now that we've explored like the why of budgeting and the different strategies and tools, let's dive into the practical tips for actually like making a budget work in real life. Like this is where the rubber meets the road, right?
Absolutely. Because it's not enough to just create a budget. You have to implement it and make it a sustainable part of your life.
Yeah, and that's where I think a lot of people struggle. So let's unpack those 10 practical tips that the source material talks about. These are the like actionable strategies that can help us, you know, turn those budgeting aspirations into reality.
All right, let's do it. From setting realistic goals to automating your savings, we'll explore each tip in detail and discuss how you can personalize them to fit your own needs and lifestyle.
Okay, so let's break down these practical tips. The source material kicks off with setting realistic goals, which seems pretty straightforward, but I think a lot of people struggle with like finding that sweet spot between, being ambitious, but also making sure that their goals are achievable. What's your take on that?
I think it's all about knowing yourself and your financial situation. It's great to have those big, audacious goals, but if you set the bar too high right out of the gate, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment.
Right. So instead of, trying to save 20% of my income right away, maybe I start with 5% and then gradually increase it as I get more comfortable with tracking my spending and stuff.
Exactly. It's about creating that positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
So those smaller wins, they build your confidence, they build momentum, and it just makes it so much easier to stick with it for the long haul.
Yeah, I like that. It's about progress, not perfection. Okay, so the next tip is track every dollar. This one sounds a little tedious to me, but I know you're a big advocate for this. So why is it so important to track every single dollar?
It really comes down to awareness. Until you actually see where your money is going, you can't make informed decisions about where you want it to go. It's like trying to lose weight without paying attention to what you're eating. You might have a general idea, but the details really matter.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. So it's not about depriving yourself or anything like that. It's more about just being conscious about your choices.
Right.
So do you have any tips for making the tracking process a little less painful?
Yeah, I would say just find a method that fits your lifestyle. Some people love the convenience of, budgeting apps, all the automation and stuff, while others really prefer that hands-on experience of a spending journal. The key is just to choose something that you'll actually stick with.
Right. Consistency is key.
Yeah.
Okay. The source material also highlights the power of automating your savings and bills. This one seems like a no-brainer to me. But I'm guessing there are a lot of people out there who haven't set this up yet.
Oh, yeah. You'd be surprised. It's honestly one of the easiest and most effective ways to make your budget work for you. So just setting up those automatic transfers to your savings account each month means the money's tucked away before you even have a chance to spend it.
Out of sight,
Yeah.
out of mind. Exactly. What about bill payments? Automating those can probably save a lot of stress and maybe some late fees.
For sure. Usually you can set up automatic payments through your bank or this directly with the service provider. And then your bills are just paid on time every time. You don't have to remember due dates or manually transfer funds or anything like that.
Yeah, it's a huge time saver.
Yeah.
Okay, the next tip is one we've touched on a little bit already. Prioritize needs over wants. But I think there can be some tricky gray areas there where the line between a need and a want gets a little blurry. So you have any advice for navigating that?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to getting clear on your values and what truly matters to you. So for some people, experiences might be more fulfilling than material possessions. For others, it might be investing in their health or their education. So I think before you make a purchase, it's always helpful to kind of ask yourself, does this really align with my values and long-term goals?
Right.
Or is it just, a fleeting desire?
So give yourself that cooling off period. The source material also talks about setting spending limits, which sounds a lot like that envelope system we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It is. Whether you use physical envelopes or a budgeting app that has a feature that mimics that system, the principle is the same. You're allocating a specific amount of money for each spending category. And then once that money's gone, you're done spending in that category for the month.
So it's like giving yourself a mini budget within your overall budget.
Yeah.
And that visual aspect of it can be really helpful.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, the next tip is plan for flexibility. So how much of a buffer should we actually be building into our budgets for those, like unexpected costs? Because we know they're going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on your individual circumstances, but a good rule of thumb is to allocate around like 5 to 10% of your income for those unexpected expenses.
Okay, so if like my monthly income is $4,000, I
Mhm.
should aim to set aside around like $200 to $400
Mhm.
for those just-in-case scenarios.
Exactly. And that could cover things like surprise car repairs, medical bills, or, those last-minute travel expenses. And having that buffer in place can really prevent you from having to, like, dip into your savings or go into debt when those unexpected costs pop up.
Yeah, that peace of mind is priceless.
Hmm.
Okay, the source material also stresses the importance of reviewing and adjusting your budget regularly. How often should we be doing this, and like, what should we be looking for?
Ideally, you should review it at least once a month. It's a chance to kind of analyze your spending patterns, see where you maybe went over budget or under budget, and then make adjustments for the upcoming month.
So it's not about being perfect, it's more about being proactive.
Exactly.
Any tips for actually making those adjustments?
I would say look for areas where you're consistently overspending. Like, is it dining out? Is it entertainment? Is it clothing? Once you identify those patterns, you can brainstorm strategies to either reduce your spending in those categories or adjust your budget accordingly.
Makes sense. It's all about learning and adapting as you go. Okay, the next tip is shop smart. I love a good deal, so do you have any like secret bargain hunting tips?
Honestly, I think the internet is your best friend. So before you make a purchase, just take a few minutes to compare prices from different retailers, look for coupon codes, sign up for email lists to receive exclusive discounts.
Yeah, I've been trying to be more mindful about like my inbox clutter these days, but those exclusive discounts can be really tempting.
Yeah, it's a balance for sure. You could always create a separate email address specifically for promotional emails so they don't overwhelm your primary inbox.
That's a good idea. What about those buy now, pay later offers? They seem to be everywhere these days.
They are. They can be tempting, especially for larger purchases. But it's important to remember that you're essentially taking on debt, even if it's interest-free for a certain period. So before you opt for one of those plans, just make sure you really understand all of the terms and conditions, including any potential fees or interest charges. That might come into play later.
So proceed with caution. It's always better to save up for a purchase than to go into debt,
Exactly.
even if it seems like a convenient option in the moment. Okay, so moving on to, I think, one of the biggest budgeting challenges, avoiding impulse purchases. So any advice on how to resist those tempting but often unnecessary buys?
I think this is where that mindset piece really comes into play, recognizing those triggers that lead to those impulse purchases.
Right.
So pay attention to your emotions when you're shopping. Are you feeling stressed? Are you bored? Are you lonely? Sometimes we shop as a way to cope with those feelings. So if you find yourself reaching for your wallet when you're not in a rational state of mind, just step away and give yourself time to cool down.
So create that pause between the impulse and the action.
Exactly. And remember that wish list strategy we talked about. If you're tempted by something, just add it to your wish list and then revisit it later. You might find that after a few days or weeks, you don't even really want it anymore.
That's a good way to filter out those fleeting desires from the things that you really value and want to invest in.
Yeah.
Okay, and the final tip is one that I am personally a big fan of. Rewarding yourself for milestones. So let's talk about some creative and maybe budget-friendly ways to celebrate those financial wins.
Rewards don't have to be expensive or extravagant. The key is to just choose something that you genuinely enjoy. And that reinforces those positive financial habits.
So instead of, treating myself to a fancy dinner when I reach a savings goal, maybe I plan a fun outing with friends or buy myself a new book.
Exactly. It's about finding those activities or experiences that bring you joy. And remember, even small rewards can be really effective.
Like what?
Like taking a relaxing bath or finally watching that movie you've been wanting to see.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Just those little moments of celebration can really make the budgeting journey so much more enjoyable.
It's sustainable. So we've gone through all 10 of those practical tips for making a budget work. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners out there who are feeling inspired to take charge of their finances?
I would just say remember that budgeting isn't about deprivation. It's about empowerment. It's about making conscious choices with your money and designing a life that truly aligns with your values and your aspirations.
That's such a good way to put it. It's not about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes to the things that truly matter.
Right.
And the beauty of it is that it can be tailored to fit your own individual
Yeah.
needs, and preferences.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to experiment until you find what works best for you. This has been such an insightful conversation. We've covered so much ground from like the psychology of financial control to all those practical tips, and
I know it's a lot.
it is a lot. But before we move on to the final segment where we kind of explore that long-term impact of all these strategies, let's just take a moment to reflect. What's like one key takeaway that you hope our listeners will carry with them from this discussion?
For me, it's that budgeting isn't just about, crunching numbers and stuff. It's more about like understanding the psychology behind our financial decisions and creating a system that like actually supports those long-term goals.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's about recognizing those like spending habits that we've developed over time and finding ways to shift those in a more positive direction.
It's like rewiring our financial brains. So let's talk about like the long-term impact of all of these budgeting strategies. The sources mentioned benefits like, reduced financial stress, improved credit scores, increased savings. But what about like the less tangible benefits? How does budgeting impact our overall well-being and our relationship with money? That's such an important thing to consider. When you feel in control of your finances, it really creates like a ripple effect across all areas of your life. You sleep better, you worry less, you have more mental bandwidth to focus on the things that truly matter.
It's like that weight has been lifted off your shoulders.
Yeah.
You're not constantly stressed about like making ends meet or avoiding those calls from creditors.
Exactly. And that newfound freedom which can be so empowering. It allows you to pursue your passions, invest in your relationships, create a life that feels more aligned with your values.
I love that. It's about so much more than just like paying bills and saving money. It's about creating a life of like financial freedom and fulfillment.
Absolutely. And that sense of empowerment extends to your relationships as well. When you're not constantly arguing about money with your partner or your loved ones, it creates more space for connection and joy.
That is so true. Financial stress can be like a major strain on relationships, but when you're both on the same page
Yeah.
and working towards those shared financial goals, it can actually strengthen your bond.
Yeah, it's like you're a team working together towards a common vision. And that shared sense of purpose can be so unifying.
Budgeting isn't just a personal finance tool, it's a relationship tool. But let's be real, even with the best of intentions, there will be times when we stumble. We might overspend, we might miss a payment, or just feel discouraged by the process. So what advice do you have for like navigating those inevitable setbacks?
First and foremost, be kind to yourself. Everyone makes mistakes. It's not about being perfect. It's about progress.
Right. So instead of like beating myself up when I mess up, I should view it as like a learning opportunity and adjust my strategy accordingly.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. There are so many resources available, from financial advisors to online communities to provide guidance and support.
It's like having a financial cheerleader in your corner, rooting you on and keeping you accountable. But what about like those deeper rooted financial beliefs? That might be holding us back. The sources talk a little bit about the importance of addressing those limiting beliefs around money. Any advice on how to tackle those?
Well, it's definitely a process. Often those beliefs are ingrained from childhood or past experiences. So it might be helpful to explore those beliefs with a therapist or a financial coach who can help you kind of unpack them and create a more empowering financial mindset.
Sometimes we need that extra support to challenge those negative thought patterns and create a more positive relationship with money.
Right. And remember, it's an ongoing journey. Just like with any aspect of personal growth, it takes time and effort to shift those deeply ingrained beliefs.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. We've covered so much ground, from those practical tips for making a budget work to the profound impact that it can have on our well-being and our relationships.
Yeah, it's been great.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. Based on everything we've talked about today, what's one small step that they can take right now to start creating that brighter financial future?
I would say just take a few minutes to reflect on your financial goals and aspirations. Like, what do you truly want to achieve with your money? Once you have that clarity, you can start exploring those budgeting strategies and tools that we've talked about. And remember, even the smallest step in the right direction can make a world of difference.
That is such a powerful reminder. So to our listeners out there, we encourage you to take that first step today, whether it's downloading a budgeting app, setting up an automatic savings transfer, or just writing down your financial goals. Start creating that financial future that you deserve. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of budgeting. We hope you found it informative and empowering.
And remember, You have the power to create a life of financial freedom and fulfillment.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for a brighter financial future.